Adam Small here again from MyMusicMasterclass, and today we have another product review. So what we have here is this little tiny amp. It's a 3-watt bass amplifier from Blackstar, and it's called a FLY3BASS. Now before we continue this review, I want to say that I purposefully am only using one stereo room mic for this entire video. So the reason that I'm not using my lavalier mic, any of my other fancy microphones, or close micing this thing, is because I want you to hear what this amp sounds like in a room, the way it would sound like if you were practicing. When you close mic an amp, if I were to put a 57 right on the grill here, or any of my other microphones, and then if I were to raise it in my software, you wouldn't really get a sense of what this thing sounds like when I'm talking as well. So you can hear how this thing sounds compared to the volume of my speaking voice. Now I don't have this thing maxed out by any means. I have it about halfway on the gain and all the way up on the master here. But basically, if I play, you can hear. You can hear how loud it is compared to my talking voice, right? So let's get to the specs on this thing. So here it is. It's less than 2 pounds. I'm getting no exercise from this at all. And let's do the disclaimer before I get into all this. Blackstar did give us this amp in exchange for this video review, but they didn't coach us in any way or tell us to say anything specific, so we're going to be unbiased as usual. And thanks for sending us this unit to test. So the FLY3BASS has a 2-inch speaker in here. It's 3 watts. It's battery powered. It has 6 AA's that shoot in the back here. You can just put them right there. There is an adapter that you can get from Blackstar, but it didn't come with the unit. So there's an optional adapter, but I've just been using it on batteries here and it's working just fine. As far as inputs and outputs go, you have 1/4 inch input to get your bass in, right? Because it's a bass amp. And you have 2 1/8 inch jacks here. One of them is a line in, meaning that you can plug in your phone, a tablet, a computer, along with an 1/8 inch cable. And you have a headphone out. You have an overdrive switch, which you can switch between the clean channel and the overdrive channel. You have a sub knob on top, which will apparently bring in some low end to the sound, maybe emulate a bigger speaker. We'll see how that sounds. You have 2 level knobs, just like most amps. You have the master level here, and you have the gain over here. Most of you should know what they do. You also have an EQ knob, which they call depth, and a compressor, which has some various settings that we'll test out as well. Now, before we get into the sound test portion of this, I want to say one thing. This is, again, a 3-watt amplifier, which any bass player that has done gigs or that has, you know, some kind of gig-worthy amplifier would know is a very, very small amount of watts. For instance, a guitar amp that is 30 watts might be pretty loud, whereas a bass amp that is 30 watts is not loud. You couldn't really do a gig with it. It would be a practice amp. You could maybe play with someone with an acoustic guitar or something like that, but it would be very quiet, okay? You need more watts to push more air because bass waves, they take more power to get out there than the higher frequencies. I just wanted to get that out of the way before doing the sound test so that someone's not fooled into thinking they're going to get this tiny amp and be able to play with their friends or at a campfire. You technically could, and I'll show you that. You can make this thing loud, but it's going to distort, okay? But anyway, if you want it to sound like a clean, low bass sound, you're going to have to do it at a level that is audible to yourself to practice, not a level to perform. Okay, so let's get started. So you can see my settings here, and these are the exact settings that I used to play that very small thing while I was talking so you could hear the levels. Let's talk about the EQ knob here first, because it's not a standard EQ, meaning that you don't have a bass, a mid, and a treble that you just independently raise. Instead, this knob functions more like a shaper, meaning that it's fatter at one point, then you can raise your mids in another point and have a mid cut in yet another point. And of course you can go in between these areas, and we'll mess with that right now. So here's the depth all the way down. So let's do it this way now. Let's go that around there. Let's go further. Right? Right, we're starting to cut mids now. Right, there's hardly any mids up here. So depending on how you set the EQ, you'll actually be able to make this amp either louder with a clean signal or dirtier, right, at the same volume. And that's because of what frequencies are being pushed on this speaker. So by shaping it a certain way, you could definitely get it to be louder and cleaner. Let's see what we can do. Let's raise the volume until it breaks up. This is completely maxed out. You have your gain on 10 and your output on 10. And I'm talking now, so you can hear how loud I'm talking, right? So that's significantly louder than this. This is halfway on the level, right? Okay, so anyway, let's see how loud we can get this without breaking up. It's breaking up there. It's starting to break up over here. So about halfway on this level. Okay, so I'm messing with the EQ now to try to see what I can do to make this thing louder by getting rid of some frequencies. Right now I have it, as you can see here, and let's see what this sounds like. Right, it's a little fuzzy on the bottom, but it is a little bit louder than when I did this with the EQ all the way down. Yeah, it's definitely louder than that. You're able to kind of finagle this thing to be a bit louder without breaking up, but it's still going to be a little fuzzy because, again, it's tiny. But yeah, that worked as I expected. That being said, if you want to be louder and you do want to play with some people and you don't care about a little overdrive on your tone, you don't even need to use this overdrive switch, right? If I turn this here to 3/4, it's going to be pretty loud. And it's kind of an interesting tone, actually. So if you're going for a clean tone, obviously that won't make you the happiest, but if you're just trying to get enough volume to be able to play with others and you don't mind some overdrive and some grit, you can do it. Now I'm back to square one here, meaning that I have my EQ all the way down to the left and the level, or the gain at least, at half. All right, overdrive time. Obviously you're getting a lot more gain now, because as soon as you introduce distortion into the signal, just as before when we got distortion, it can get louder. That's what happens, right? It doesn't take as much power to push that sound out than a clean bass with a tight low end. Let's go as loud as it gets. And of course that's only with one EQ setting, right? It's all the way down. If we do that here. Cool. Let's get this thing back to a clean sound and see what the compressor does. Here it is without any compression. So I don't typically use compressors when I'm playing live. I just try to get the dynamics with my hands. But when I'm in the studio, I always put them in the signal chain. That being said, this compressor is doing what compressors do, meaning it's evening out the transients, making everything more one volume and less dynamic. But it's also raising your overall level. So it's doing more than just one thing. As you move along the spectrum here, you can hear it. All right, so this is without it on. It's on a little bit. You can hear it. It raises it up a little bit. It's trying to make up some gain. But if it's at 5, let's see how loud we can get this without it distorting. About the same. That's pretty good. So it might be a little louder. And that's without compressor. Now let's try the sub knob to see if it can give us that perceived bass that they talked about here in the manual. Here's me with my default sound, no sub activated. I can hear it working already, actually. Yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to try to put it all the way up. Now, to be clear, this isn't raising the bass in a traditional way. It's definitely doing something to the sound. It's giving you a perceived bass because there's no physical way to just push regular crazy bass through the speaker. But I wouldn't put it all the way up because this is all the way up. I think it's taking away from some of the other parts of the sound, but some of it might be cool. I'm going to add like 30% of it. And this is without it. And put it halfway. It definitely has a vibe, and it definitely helps give you that perception of low end. Now, for this next part of the review, I'm going to do something that interests me as a bass player, and I think it'll interest other bass players as well. And it's something that I didn't see in the other videos that I watched on YouTube, which is taking the headphone out of this, putting it into my recording rig, and hearing this thing straight without the speaker at all. Because if you're on your couch and you're chilling, you can play this thing with sound, but you can also put headphones in and utilize the line in for MP3s and practice silently. And what does that sound like? And I know it's going to sound differently than it does for this speaker. right, so that concludes the sound test portion of this review, and here are some of my thoughts. First of all, this amp has a 3-inch speaker, not a 2-inch speaker, which I said previously in the video, but I've added corrections to that. Also, Blackstar offers an extension speaker, which I didn't have to test here, or else I would have tested it out, but it's a proprietary thing. It's not as if you can just connect this amp with any external speaker. It's basically another powered speaker of the same size, 3-inch, that connects into the back of this unit via this Ethernet looking port back here. So if you connect this thing to its external speaker, its counterpart, it should be louder with more headroom, right? That seems pretty obvious. The external speaker will look like this. It looks just like this too, right? So it would be this kind of rig. This is a FLY3 Charge, which I will be doing a review about next, but that's what it would look like. And essentially you should have more headroom and more volume with the extension speaker. In the video, there are several times where I say it's louder with this EQ setting or something like that. And a lot of that has to do with actually perceived loudness, meaning that our ears are tuned in to certain frequencies. And the most audible frequency to us is something around the range of a human voice, which is why guitars really cut through a lot more than bass frequencies. Now, as far as what I think of this amp, what my opinion is, I like it for practicing. I actually think it's a really cool tool. This is because I can get it to be clean enough and with a pleasing sound through this speaker at a volume that I can hear it when I'm practicing, and that's cool with me. Also, if you plug in headphones, the headphone amp actually sounds surprisingly good and full, and all these controls, kind of like I showed you in the video, you can really hear the nuances once you do that, and there's more headroom. It's actually loud there. It's really loud in the headphones. So overall, I'd say that I really enjoyed this thing for exactly what it is. For a really cool practice tool, for something I can bring upstairs and play on the couch, keep it on until I need to be quiet, then put the headphones in and play along with things. And yeah, I mean, I totally recommend this thing for practicing bass, and I think it's a really cool tool to have. I hope you enjoyed this video and got something out of it. Please subscribe to the channel, add some comments if you have any, and that's it. I'll see you next time.